Good evening, everyone. I'm Alexandra Kino-Fike, President of the KPPCSD Board of Directors. Looks like we're all here. Let's get started. It's now 6:03 p.m. and I'd like to call this special meeting of the KPPCSD to order and have our clerk conduct the roll call.
Director Duggan. Vice President Goff.
Here.
Director Hassai.
Here.
Director Spath.
Yeah.
Nakino-Fike.
Here. Thank you, Linnell. We'll now have public comment on the special meeting agenda, and I'll read the standard language relating to public comment. Individuals wishing to address the Board of Directors concerning this special meeting agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. For Zoom attendees, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you're called on by the board president, you'll be unmuted and you can address the board. Please state your name clearly for the audio recording, and you're requested to address your comments to the Board of Directors and not to staff and/or the audience. By state law, the board is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation that you would like distributed to the board, please mail or email it to the contact information on our website for the clerk of the board. Are there any comments?
I have.
Hearing none, we'll adjourn to the closed session.
You open the PDF, or is this PDF? Oh, and now you can.
Hello. Hello, everyone. We're back. It's 7:02, and there are no reportable items. Well, okay. We'll adjourn the special meeting now and begin our regular meeting. It's yeah. Okay. It's 7:03. We'd like to call a regular meeting of the KPPCSD to order and have our clerk conduct the roll call.
Director Duggan. Here. Vice President Goff. Here. Director Hassai.
Here.
Director Spath.
Yeah.
President Aquino Fike.
Here. We've got a pretty light agenda today. Just like to welcome everyone and hope you're surviving the time change. It's been a little rough this week for me. So let's move on to public comment. I have no significant remarks this month. Individuals wishing to address the board of directors concerning any items not on the agenda may make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. For Zoom attendees, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you are called on by the board president, you'll be unmuted and you can address the board of directors. Please state your name clearly for the audio recording. You are requested to address your comments to the president and the board of directors and not to staff and/or the audience. By state law, the board is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation that you would like distributed to the board, please send it to the clerk of the board at the contact info on our website. Are there any comments? There's one in the room.
A. Stevens Delk. Last February, newly elected Cass asked me to meet with her to review what I knew about Bayview's services and rates. A month or so later, she told me that she had talked with our general manager and both felt that this was, quote, not a front burner issue. I agreed. But this summer, I began to wonder if the pot was not just on the back burner, but had been put on the back porch. 2 weeks ago, David and I met, and he assured me that things were cooking, my term. To continue the analogy, I appreciate the time and effort being put into bringing this to the table next month by the chef, sous chefs, wait staff, and cleanup crew. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Madam President, on the consent calendar, I want to make a comment on the financial reports. The revenue it is showing is not really there. It's what the county says we can draw off of. And so once we get out of our relationship with the county, that's going to go away. And it will be a realistic number that we will get that is truly money in our bank. Other than that, the financial reports are still reflecting our expenses properly.
Thank you for that clarification. Any questions from the board?
Which figure are you talking about, General Manager?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Which figure are you referring to?
If you look at the page, the second page of the financial report, which says profit and loss budget versus actual for October 2023, all funds, you'll see that, like, for example, levy tax police, our property tax money, It's showing 2,228,000. That's not realistic. That's a draw that the county has estimated we will have that we could draw off of if we wanted. And that's part of the reason why I feel it's safer for us to be doing business knowing what we have in the bank in reality. And I'm still working on with the county on that.
Thank you.
David, I'm assuming also the special tax and Measure D are also the same because they're part of the property tax payments.
Any line items in that revenue that have to do with the county holdings of collection would be the same assumption or the same truth that it's a draw off of number. It's not an actual number they've collected.
Okay.
All right, returning to the consent calendar. So this month we have approval of minutes for the special and regular meeting of October 12, 2023. And receiving and filing the financial reports with the clarifications that David just mentioned, and ratifying the October bills paid.
I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt the consent calendar.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Next, we'll move on to our monthly reports. I'd like to invite the chief up for the monthly, his monthly report.
Good evening, members of the board, General Manager Aranda and the public. The monthly report for October has been submitted. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I would like to comment on one particular section. On Friday, October the 20th, Kensington officers were on the lookout for impaired drivers as they took part in grant-funded saturation patrols. 14 traffic stops were completed, 10 citations were issued, and 4 warnings were given. 1 misdemeanor warrant arrest was made, 1 misdemeanor DUI arrest was made, and 1 traffic collision was documented. This was all made possible by a grant-funded money provided by the Office of Traffic Safety that we wrote. So it was a very effective operation. Lastly, I would like to point out in our community section on Saturday, October the 28th, Sergeant Landy, Officer Thoda, and volunteers Luke Stoke and Mike Logan represented the PD at the 25th National Drug Take Back Day and shredding event. On October the 29th, Sergeant Landy, Officer Thoda, and volunteer Logan represented the Kensington Police Department for the Halloween Harvest Festival at Calusa Circle, which was wonderful. So everybody had a good time out there, and we had no incidents this Halloween.
Director Goff.
Am I allowed to ask about specific incidents? I saw something about something near a felony near Ocean View Elementary.
Let's give it a try. Go for
it. Was that the stolen car incident? My daughter goes to school there, so
which can you direct me to the bullet point?
I don't know if it's in the patrol log.
Could have been in the front.
Ocean View. It's on the first page in the second paragraph. Officers responded to assist Albany PD with a high-risk felony arrest at the Ocean View Elementary School.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime an officer encounters a vehicle that's reported stolen, it's a high-risk felony stop. If they don't approach the car, the driver's already in commission of a felony. So high-risk stop. Other agencies assist to get the person out of the car safely and recover the vehicle.
Okay. That was consistent with what the principal said, but I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any other felony I should be concerned about. And then there was one other incident, I feel like at Moser, that there was a chase or someone sped off, but then the officers didn't pursue.
Yes.
Because it was not a safe situation to pursue. And I'm just wondering, like, aren't they supposed to pursue if it's not safe? I don't know. What event would that not be the right time to pursue?
For police officers?
Yeah.
Today, 2023, 99% of the time. It's too dangerous. It's not worth it.
For the officers and
the public.
Yeah.
The public. Some of the officers, they want to hit the gas, but it's usually the administrators that are like, stop. No. So for the most part, the risks are too great. There are going to be times where they're going to pursue, and they are violent in progress. crimes that have occurred, and the public is at a continued risk. They make the decision on whether or not to pursue based on the road conditions and what they know at the time. And at that time, I believe the officer came upon a suspicious vehicle and they took off. Well, if we were to pursue that, we really don't have a crime at the moment.
Okay.
So we treat those very cautiously. So.
Director
Thank you.
Hussey.
I wanted to ask about the total incidents by type and dosage. It's a chart.
Yes.
And I'm a little confused about the color. And I know that, this is my home printer. It's actually pretty easy to understand, but there is a green column. There's two green columns, and the two greens that it's hard for me to a little bit to delineate, but one looks like stolen property, the other one looks like weapons. And I just can't tell from this report. I guess I have to go back to the written, if what I'm looking at on this chart. There was one incident and it's coded green, and then there's one above it, and I think it's the same. I can't tell if that's an impound case. Maybe the color's a little different.
Yeah, it's probable. This month we did not have any weapons recovered that I'm aware of.
So it looks like this is probably
either a stolen
theft
vehicle
and
recovered.
impound.
Yeah.
Impound. Okay, thank you. It's just a color issue on my printer.
Director Duggan.
Firstly, I wanted to commend you on decreasing the response time from 5.8 minutes to 4.17 minutes. And then I wanted to ask, how many officers make up a full complement for the police department, and where are we at right now?
Full staffing, we were authorized for 9, and we have 8 at the moment.
Okay.
Is there another question?
Do we have anyone who has applied for that last job?
Several. We interviewed 3 yesterday.
Okay.
2 look promising.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually had a slightly unrelated question. We're all aware of the fire in El Cerrito that happened, I believe, Friday.
Yeah.
And I know I think they did ask for a few blocks to evacuate.
A few homes, yes.
Yes. So if that were to happen in Kensington, I guess what is the role of was El Cerrito PD involved in that evacuation, or?
Yeah, El Cerrito was involved in that operation. And they're sort of on the point of go to these homes and tell these people to get out, or tell them that it's safe, block the roads so our fire trucks can get up here. Fire department's in charge of that. And most of the time we're just in the way at a fire. We want them to get up there as safely as possible and to handle business. And I would expect something like that occurred here. You're going to the same response is going to be received. Our officers are going to get up there, help out the fire department. We're going to get a contingent from El Cerrito to help us if there are officers available as well.
Yeah, and I was just curious curious about the process for actually evacuating or letting those residents know that. Yeah. Okay.
In that instance, I went back and I did an Excel alert immediately within minutes. And the gentleman in the uniform behind me went straight up to the hill to provide information to me down the hill. So it's a coordinated effort, and they were on that fire fast. If you notice that it was just across the street from the fire department. So if there's a good place to have a fire, that's it.
Question.
Yeah.
If we do have a fire here, I'm presuming that you will be making the evacuation call in conjunction with the fire department.
Yes.
But it'll be your responsibility, shall we say, to make that final call on evacuation. And I did see some advice that came out of Chief Keith from El Cerrito, which I was a little disturbed about. He indicated as to certain residents in the area to watch for where the fire is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And make a decision as to whether they should evacuate or not. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, frankly. I mean, if I were in my home and looked to the east in Tilden Park and saw some fire there, I certainly would like to know directly from authorities whether I should get out or not.
Yeah.
Not wait till see how close the fire comes to me.
Yeah.
I know. It's just, well, I guess I'm just complaining a little bit here, but it's not about you. It was unfortunately that I was unfortunate that that, in my mind, that he had conveyed that message. And I hope that it's not, what we would do here for sure.
No, I'm personally, I'm a little bit different. If I see a fire coming, I'm going to leave. I can't control the wind or the flammability of what's in my neighbor's backyard. It's too risky. So I would gather up my things and go.
I understand that, but I would hope too that you and your staff would certainly send out a Nixle message.
That's what we would do. We would alert the community warning system.
Get the heck out of here, folks.
Yes, absolutely. We would make every effort to get everybody off the hill as quickly as possible.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for handling our questions and your patience. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, let's move on to the next item, the general manager's report.
Be happy to answer any questions. I do want to add that today Rosa received a call from a resident letting us know that there was a dumping of some mattresses. I don't have the exact address. I think it was around the cemetery area. And she contacted Bayview and they said they would pick it up, but they don't have the ability to pick it up until Tuesday. But if any of you have any of your constituents calling you about it, it will be taken care of. And I'll be happy to answer any questions on the manager's report.
Any questions on the GM's report from the board? None. Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on. Next up is a verbal update from the Ad Hoc Reorganization Committee.
Let me suggest that we combine that with the discussion on the RFP, if you don't mind, which is further in the agenda.
Okay, great. I guess we can move on to then the update from the Police Department and District Office Permanent Location Ad Hoc Committee. I'll give a brief update. There were two properties in my presentation last month that were these are residential properties that were still in the mix. One was, I believe 385 Calusa, is that the right address? And the other was 219 Arlington. Both are now off the table. We've had contact with the owners and they are not interested in pursuing conversations at the moment. So those are also now off the list of things in the mix. We've also been moving forward and trying to get the geotech study underway. Things are proceeding, and I believe the first step will be the review of all the documentation that's available. We also had two productive meetings with Supervisor John Joya. One was to review, the options on the table in terms of properties for the new location. And the next meeting was it was very generous of Supervisor Joya. He organized a meeting with representatives from the Contra Costa Department for Conservation and Development and the Contra Costa County Department of Public Works. So we were able to understand the full process for developing a new building on one of our properties, the timeline, all of the different steps, what they would be looking for. There was also some interesting information about costs. So we feel a lot more informed about all the different steps, and we've now established ongoing communication with representatives from those two departments. They understand that this is, and especially that I have to thank Supervisor Joya for he's really prioritizing this issue, and he understands how important it is to Kensington. So I want to thank him and also those agencies. Not much more for me to add, really. And do you want to provide a quick update on that?
Also, thanks to Supervisor Joya and his office, we were able to meet with a representative from Assemblywoman Buffy Wick's office to discuss and convey our interest in grant applications and for a new police building, and to get some insight from them on potential state funding opportunities. And that was a good conversation where we learned about some other sources potentially. And she will be getting back to us with some more information. So that was helpful and another step in the right direction. And I would just clarify one thing about our geotech report, which we approved last week to do phase 1. It sounds like it has happened. We're just waiting for the actual report, at least the phase 1. As far as
I haven't been in touch with him yet, but it was supposed to be due this week.
Yes. Yeah. So we believe, so we're further along than we think, but yes, communication has been a little bit of a challenge, but things are continuing to move and we're working on it.
Thanks for that clarification. Any questions from the board?
Could you talk more about what you learned from these two departments? I mean, I'd like to know what you learned because it sounded interesting, especially around the process, the types of things and costs.
Sure. My understanding, it's a lot of information I'm still kind of processing, but my understanding is that the first phase would be to ensure that and I'm speaking specifically right now about the south lot, the area south of the library. We honed in on that area. And so the first phase would be to ensure that in our general plan for Kensington that it's zoned properly, and we would have to, I think, then submit a formal application for the building and make sure that we get all the necessary zone. If there has to be any changing in zoning, that's the point when we do it. They also, this was interesting to me, they do actually read very carefully and they want, with advance notice, a copy of our geotech report. So they'll be combing through that. Another issue was drainage, which was new to me, but we would really need to ensure that we're responsible for putting in the right system to catch all the drain water and not overload systems below, which would be an expense. There would need to be a new traffic light at that curve. That would have to be integrated with the existing little flashing light here by the library. But essentially we would need a full traffic light, with the red, orange, green. And that costs to install that with all the underground wiring, $500,000. So that was a shocker for me. But they all agreed that it's actually probably a good move for Kensington because they're aware, and I'd be curious about, the police department's view on this, but that they're concerned about, the safety of that curve. So that they said that could be a plus for us in the end. What was the other? Yeah, go ahead.
Just also, I mean, a general sort of, planning, permitting, the process. And I think if anyone's been involved in that on a residential level, that can take several months to a year. And this scale of a project could be a 2-year process beginning to end, because of all of the other things that we'd have to consider. And it's just, we have to jump through the hoops, but it does seem like we would have some support internally, and everyone gets the urgency of the issue. So these steps are unavoidable with any sort of new construction. And that's what it comes down to. Obviously, a steeper slope has more challenges, but is done all the time. And we just need, again, for gathering the information bit by bit. But is what it is. I just, having been through county permitting and all, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy this time either. We just have to prepare ourselves and set expectation.
Yeah, my sense was that their biggest questions or concerns were, one, the drainage and also the stability of the soil. So the geotech report will be critical.
Let me just add too that, I mean, beyond the geotech is the first step. And they're probably going to have to do some more work there to determine whether there's a fault that goes through, which is important from the county's perspective, because as you well know, with the public safety building, it changed the whole environment as to what you could build there, what you could expand to and so forth. So that's critical, certainly from the county's perspective.
And also something that's been mentioned by the county and other experts is the need potentially, in all likelihood, for a feasibility study, which is just a more detailed costing and timeline. So we actually really understand what we're in for. So.
Thank you.
And I would note that if we're going to go for grants, particularly if we're going to go for a federal grant, then that all has to be done. I mean, we have to cost this thing out in detail. So.
Any other questions from the board on our update? Any questions from the public?
Let me ask you something. Did I go out of sequence with regard to the RFP and so forth? I'm looking at the agenda.
No, we're gonna defer that to item 13. We'll add it together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And let's move on to director comments. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to? Director Duggan?
Good evening. About 3 weeks ago, Director Hassai and I attended the California Special Districts Association Leadership Academy in Santa Rosa for 2.5 days. Besides learning a lot about how to be a better board director, I also collected information from people's comments and found several board members from 2 districts which had consolidated with other districts. Their experiences overall were positive. I got their contact info and passed it on to the consolidation committee members on our board and the KPPCSD, as well as our general managers. At last month's meeting, I was asked by President Aquino Fike to create a survey to research possible unmet needs of disabled and elderly individuals in our community. At the suggestion of community member Merrill Rafferty, I put in a proposal to the UC Berkeley Goldman School of Public Policy to get a master's program student to assist me with this survey and research. So far, 1 applicant has applied. I'll update you next month as to whether we have engaged a student volunteer. And that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Duggan. Any questions from the board? Any other, Director Hassai?
For any citizens, our citizens who are listening, as well as if we can get the message to the Kensington Property Owners Association today, after many weeks of driving by on the Arlington Avenue, and every time driving by and seeing the 2 spots south of the library on the sidewalk, which have had construction horses over sections that are falling in, I finally was able to get myself to sit down and write a note. I have raised this issue quite some time ago, I believe, to the county, and I've raised it again with Supervisor Joya's office, asking for assistance in getting that resolved. I know that Chief Gankaz is also going to be working on it with folks when he gets a moment. It is a public safety issue. I would encourage our citizens to write, I'm going to call it in as well separately to the Public Works Department, but I know that when you have a citizen app and you can take pictures and put things into Public Works, the more folks that do that, the better. I also think we need to, keep Supervisor Joya on our side here. I'm sure he'll be helpful now that I've raised this to his attention. And lastly, for anyone with the Kensington Property Owners Association who takes pride in helping us keep our roads and sidewalks in good shape and helping to interface with the county, I would ask them to step in as well. It's really a public safety issue. Everyone has to step off the sidewalk at 2 spots along that dangerous curve. It is now darker earlier, and it's really unacceptable that it has been like this for so long. So I've taken a step to raise it again and just want to encourage folks to do that. I also want to remind our citizens of another issue that, again, it's on us to keep our gutters clear. We're going to have rain next week. We're getting into rainy season. Chief Gancas has deployed his officers before during heavy rain events when necessary, but we all need to take responsibility for our areas and just want to encourage the Kensingtonians to please be mindful of that, clearing sidewalks, making sure overhanging branches aren't there for kids walking to school, and keeping our gutters clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hasai. Director Goff.
Director Hasai, can you share the app for Public Works that people should submit?
I will have to look on their site. It's actually not too hard to find if you sort of Google around a bit, but I will try to find that and either provide it somehow either next meeting or even today, if I get a chance, I'll look. But it is something you can submit photos and make requests.
And I did that for a dead tree request, and I just went to the site, and then when you hit Public Works, you can report something, and you just enter the information. So I would assume, pardon?
Through the website, not a
Yeah.
So sorry, it's not an app. It's a
website. But I think it would be very helpful because, well, I won't say because why. That use the 59 Arlington address, but under the notes, put basically on the sidewalk in front of the below the library.
Thanks, David. Any other director comments? All right, let's move on. Or any questions from the public? Seeing none. Let's move on to the next item. Approval to accept $41,000 in grant money from the Office of Traffic Safety for a traffic records improvement project.
I'm going to start off by saying this is, even though my name appears on the report, this is the chief's report, so he's going to give you the spiel.
Good evening again, members of the board, General Manager Aranda, and the general public. The Kensington Police Department wishes to streamline its collection and reporting of traffic-related data to the California Highway Patrol. The goal is to achieve industry standard reporting as set forth by the Highway Patrol's statewide integrated traffic reporting system known as SWITRS, as well as maintaining transparent information to our community and prioritizing their concerns about traffic safety. The Kensington Police Department was awarded grant funding in 2021 to modernize our process of recording vehicle collision data. The first step sought to implement new software and reporting procedures, which were completed in 2022, and that was funded by the Office of Traffic Safety. The second step would be to modernize our traffic citation process. Contra Costa County courts will transition to a digital ticketing system in 2024. The integration of this citation software will have positive impacts on efficiency, timely reporting, tracking, and real-time mapping and moving violations. The funding will be used to set up a complete electronic citation issuance system, purchase handheld devices for issuing citations, printers for each patrol car, and transfer software, bridging our existing computer system with the courts. Other benefits include improving the timeliness and accuracy of our traffic citations. Grant TR 24152 is in the amount of $41,000, and that was awarded to us last month. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the author of this grant and a previous $89,000 grant where the Kensington Police Department was awarded a DUI vehicle, and that person is Acting Lieutenant Amit Nath. He's really done a tremendous job in getting funding into the district for the betterment of everybody. So,
congratulations, and please extend our thank you to Lieutenant Nath.
I just want to add that you'll see our signatures on the application, but this particular grant, they want to see a minute action that the board is aware of it and supports it. That's why we're asking for the board action.
Director Hassan.
I have a quick question. Do you remember how much the 2020 grant was for the vehicle collision data?
25 grand. I think in total we've done 100 and I don't know, $80,000 in the last 36 months. We've been awarded grants due in large part to emit, and the previous grant was written by former Lieutenant Brad Harms.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, David. Are you looking for a motion or just okay?
We definitely need a motion, and what we're asking is for this. It's in the report, I believe.
Right. Okay, I got it now.
I move to,
Yeah, one.
public comment.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public on this? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve to accept $41,000 in grant money from the Office of Traffic Safety for a traffic records improvement project.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Next, we have approval for a request regarding a proposal, approval of the RFP regarding a financial study of the KPPCSD and KFPD for reorganization information.
And so I am going to, I wrote a very brief report, but the committee's done the majority of work and worked with the fire district. So I'll let Director Spath elaborate on that.
Yeah, I'll take the lead, but Sylvia can also chime in. As David said, at the last fire board meeting, it was approved, the RFP, with some recommended changes, which I'll point out. As a result, we have changed the RFP schedule from the RFP that we approved last month. So you can see that if we approve the RFP this evening, it'll be issued tomorrow. And the proposals will be due on December 8th, with the beginning of reviewing of responses by December 20th. And David has recommended that the committee look at the different proposals, make some assessments from my perspective in conjunction with the two general managers, and then make recommendations to the two boards. That would be my recommendation. And we can work that out certainly with the fire district board. And then the finalists will be notified mid-January, the 18th, and the contract awarded on February 1st. So the background material is pretty much what was in the previous RFP draft. There may be a little bit of change, but nothing significant. The scope of work, as you may recall, before has three different objectives associated with it. And it is a financial analysis that will look at both the two districts individually as they stand, and also as a combined district, and whether that combined district is a district that results in a dissolution of the fire district and an annexation by this board, this district, because we have the authority to provide fire services, while the fire district does not have that authority to provide police services, amongst others. The other option is true consolidation, which would mean creating a third separate district, a third independent district that would take over the responsibilities of the two districts. So those are the two options that would be available if we did go forward with a reorganization. We know that this may all lead up to that, and both boards will have to agree to go forward if we get to that point. There are three objectives. Objective one is a physical analysis of each of the two districts independently. The fire board has suggested that analysis cover 5 to 10 years going forward, but leaving that to the discretion of the consultant who does the work. Fire Board has also wanted a little more detail in the first objective, and some of that set of objectives also carries over to the second objective. And you can see with regard to these objectives, the first one is to cost out the building that or the police facility that we would be seeking to build, or if there is some interest down the road to go back into the public safety building, that would also be costed out. At the same time, both of those would also be considered in the second phase, objective 2, of a combined district. Objective 2, 3, 4 are issues that, in my mind, would happen anyways, because you have to look at the reserves for the contract, for the El Cerrito contract, for replacement of infrastructure, the fire engines, battalion chief vehicle, and also the staffing that exists for the public safety building. So that occurs both with regard to the individual assessments of the two districts and a combined district. The same would be true of 5, which looks at CalPERS obligations and also retirement obligations and liabilities. And number 6 talks about the borrowing capacity of the districts individually, as well as combined together, either in a consolidated effort. So, as I said, a lot of these cover both the individual assessment for each district and also a combined district. Objective 2 is the conduct of a physical analysis for a combined district. And again, the potential for doing 5 to 10 year projection, again, up to the consultant's determination. And some of the other aspects with regard to revenues, fund balances, liquid reserves, et cetera, and also the CalPERS obligations and the potential staffing that would occur with a combined district. And finally, objective 3 is the report, and that would require the consultant to provide drafts to both districts and staff to respond to questions and comments from both staffs of the two districts as well as the full boards, and resolving any questions that come up. Once those are resolved, hold a public meeting to present the final report. And there, you can see there are some submittal requirements. I'll point you to submittal 8, which is looking from the consultant's perspective. We will send them a standard contract and they will look at it to determine whether there are any exceptions that they feel they would want to the contract. And attachment A is attached to the RFP. And finally, there are a couple of appendices, and those appendices just refer to the municipal service reviews that have been conducted by LAPCO on both districts in the past, starting with 2009 and going up to 2021. Some of those MSRs did refer to consolidation and made some recommendations, and some did not address it whatsoever. And I would also suggest that if anyone is interested in looking at a physical analysis that has gone to LAFCO, then I would suggest you look at the most recent annexation by the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District of the East Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. It shows a very detailed physical analysis that I would expect LAFCO would want to see for their proposal, so you can get a picture of what their expectation is and what I presume a consultant would be presenting in their fiscal analysis. And if anyone is interested, I can send you the link to that proposal. So, Sylvia, if you have any other thoughts or comments.
My only comment is around the consultant agreement that's here. And this, if I just want to clarify that this consultant agreement is here as a sample of the general consulting agreement, but it would be when finalized for both districts would be signing this, and it would be
Right.
both districts.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is merely a template. And you know, from down the road, I think the committee will make a recommendation and be discussing some of the specifics with regard to contracting and so forth, and make recommendations to the two boards. So with that, any other questions?
Well, first I want to thank you both for your hard work on this. This is incredibly thorough. And I also want to commend and thank the members of the Fire Board District for their participation and their support. This is probably, I've done a lot of RFPs, and this is one of the most thorough and well thought out ones. So commend you all.
And let me just add, I want to thank Mary Morris Colas and David for their work. Yes. And again, as you just said, the Fire Board, appreciate their efforts to go through this RFP and make recommendations.
Yeah, definitely thank both of our GMs for collaborating and coordinating on this. Thank you. I don't have any questions on the actual RFP. Does any director?
I just had a question about the process in objective 3. So the consultant is presenting 3 times, is that right? Once to each board and then later in a town hall?
Is your mic not working, or is it me?
Do I need to bring it closer? Okay, sorry. I just was asking a process question in objective 3. It sounds like the consultant presents 3 times total, once to each board and then in a town hall?
Well, we can either do it once to each board, or you can do it as a combined meeting with the two boards. I mean, I think that's up, frankly, to the boards.
Well, I mean, the way it's written, it does say separately to 2 boards,
right,
but and then to a town hall upon acceptance by both boards. And I think we the public, and need to make sure that, you know, that's not a poison pill, that accepting it is not, because if they don't accept it, if it's not accepted the way it's written, then there may not ever be another town hall. So those meetings, to the presentations to both boards, which will be at public meetings, are very important. But it is written to be separately, which is fine. Or we could, I mean, maybe upon agreement, that would just be a meeting.
I mean, right now it's written as Sylvia said, that there'd be 2 separate meetings and then a public meeting. But if the issues can't be resolved, then it won't get to the public meeting situation by any means. So, yeah, and David will be sending it out, I presume, to. Do you intend to make it a broad issuance, or just sending it to those individuals who?
Mary and I had that discussion this morning.
Okay.
I gave Mary 4 vendors that were not recommendations, they're not allowed to make, 4 vendors that LAFCO knew of. And then also 1 vendor that has actually stayed in touch with me this whole time that was recommended by CSDA. Soon as the vote's taken, I'm sending the information to Mary, and she's going to get it out.
Could I just recommend that a quick check with general counsel about, you know, procedures? This is a request for proposal. And to be honest, I'm not always clear on the rules and regulations about what we must do, but the value of this is significant enough. I'm not sure if we don't even have a value yet, but it's.
Yeah, there is. Anne's aware of this. She was sent everything.
Okay.
But there's nothing from a legal standpoint that stops us from moving forward. Now, when we come back with the proposals, we'll probably need some legal advice on not only the structure of the different bids. Those are consulting bids, so that we have a little more flexibility, but also in the wording of the actual agreement that we're going to enter into.
I just meant whether we need to post this somewhere. You know, it's a request for proposals. I know we're going to send it proactively to maybe 5 groups, but do we need to advertise it, for example, or anything like that?
Yeah, we're not required for consulting services to advertise, but if the board feels it would be appropriate, I think it would cost a lot of money, but
No. I'm not.
the CSDA RFP site is well looked at. And
We'll put it maybe, do we have to pay for that?
we're definitely, yeah, it's going to cost a little bit of money and Mary's going to take care of that, but that's definitely a good place to put it.
So it will be posted somewhere.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I just want to make sure.
Now, one last thing, David, and I'm trying to go through this again. If questions come up, they're supposed to go to the 2 general managers, as I recall, right?
Can or should we also post it on our website, our homepage? Is that appropriate or?
I think it would be good, and I can confirm with Mary that we're again enjoying agreement with it, but I think it would be good for the residents to see it has gone out.
Yes. And it's free.
And there might be a resident in Kensington that does this type of work.
That's a nice suggestion. Okay, great. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Check Zoom. Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that I recommend that the board make a motion that the board approve the request for proposal to obtain pricing from various vendors regarding a financial study of the KPPCSD and KFPD with respect to reorganization.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries 5-0. Next and last, we have a presentation of the public safety camera program called FLOC.
Good evening again. This has been a long time coming, this particular proposal. I have brought with me Sergeant Brian Landy, who has been the tip of the spear for this program since it came to light. Just a quick background on this. The purpose of the agenda item is to give you a presentation on the system for the directors and the general public to look at and review. It's not an action item. And if the staff desires to bring this item back for approval in December, that would be fabulous. The police departments throughout the Bay Area are using this particular system to assist in various facets of police work. Recently in Kensington, a reported abduction that took place was found to be not true due to the FLOC program tracking down the child and the guardians possessed by the El Cerrito Police Department and city. The cameras are very effective. We've done extensive research, both in understanding the system directly from FLOC and their representatives and in speaking with other police departments throughout the area. Part of the agenda has a litany of literature, facts, and information about this FLOC camera system. And more recently in the news, the city of San Francisco's mayor asked for more than 300 of these cameras to be installed throughout the city. We're only asking for 5, so a little bit smaller. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Sergeant Brian Landy. He is the expert along with the FLOC representative, Kristen, who is on board up there in the meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Good evening, members of the board, General Manager Aranda, and members of the public. As many of you probably recall, in 2022, we had a challenging year with catalytic converter thefts. We had, out of our 350 case reports, 47 of those were catalytic converter thefts. We had 17 stolen vehicles, 21 hit and run collisions. This year, we're on track to meet or exceed those numbers. Oftentimes when we respond to these cases, we have no leads. We have one officer who's able to respond and investigate. We often don't have witnesses and we don't have surveillance video in most of our neighborhoods. That puts us at a kind of crossroads when it comes to trying to provide some kind of remediation for the citizens who are most financially impacted by this crime. We also are not able to develop leads to try to prevent or interdict the criminals are coming in to do these thefts. Multiple municipalities in the Bay Area, including all of our neighbors, with the exception of Albany, have either Flock or another similar type system that they're using to try to impact these issues. It's not just an issue of deterrence, but also an issue of being able to provide investigative leads for us to follow up on. Kensington is a unique department. We're small. We don't have full-time detectives. It is up to the officers to conduct those investigations, and we just don't have the same resources that the other agencies have. So for us, having Flock becomes a force multiplier by being able to give us some actionable leads that, given the personnel resources that we have, allows us to do some kind of investigative follow-up. Case in point, and this is in the Flock presentation, and I think it was asked about the pursuit we had last month. We were able to find some resolution to that only because of the Flock camera system. That was not an incident where we could safely pursue, not just because we didn't have a clear, it's a public safety need for pursuit, but where, again, due to our staffing, I can't safely allow one officer to engage a vehicle pursuit without having any cover backup for what's ultimately going to end up as a felony car stop. Flock gives us some way to follow up on those cases where we do feel a pressing need to do something, but where the public safety need to protect the public and, in fact, the drivers of those often stolen vehicles, it does not need to escalate to that degree. I believe this is a very well-established technology. Automated license plate cameras have been around for 2 or 3 decades. They're well-established, well-used, and researched. Communities across the country have used them. Academics have looked at them as well. And I believe Kensington, as a small community, could greatly benefit from having an additional investigative resource. And to that, I will turn it over to Kristen McLeod or Ed Flock, who's been assisting us in researching what our options are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Landy. Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Wonderful. Good evening, members of the board and staff and community members of Kensington. My name is Kristen McLeod, as previously mentioned, and I'm a community engagement manager with Flock Safety. And my role really is to provide information to communities, elected officials, and boards about our technology and really what it does and doesn't do. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and the presentation. Okay. Great. Okay. So Sergeant Landy and Chief kind of touched upon here, some of which you will have in your packet, some of the property crime stats particular to Kensington, and a heat map of crime involving suspect vehicles. I'd like to start with, this is Flock Safety's mission. It's to eliminate crime and to shape a safer future together. And that means with communities like Kensington. And why Flock Safety? So Flock was founded back in 2017 when Garrett Langley, our CEO, he himself and his neighborhood were experiencing an uptick in crime, and namely property crimes, vehicle thefts. And he went to law enforcement and asked, what could be done? What can we do to prevent this from happening? How can we resolve cases and make victims whole? And law enforcement said, it's really tough to get investigative leads without vehicle descriptions and license plate numbers, as the majority of crimes committed are in conjunction with a vehicle. So having that information would be really helpful. So Garrett set out and did a ton of research, and he found out 3 things that Sergeant Landy actually mentioned: that ALPR or LPR technology has been around since the 70s, that many of the legacy companies, the technology was really expensive, so it rendered it very inaccessible to many communities across the nation. And then lastly, that a lot of the legacy companies that were providing the technology often sold the data to third parties. So Garrett set out to create a company that was built on ethics, that we take privacy very seriously, and was efficient and effective and affordable. Flock really believes, or we observe, that there are limited police resources. Your department, your officers wear many different hats. Crime occurs daily, hourly, and trust is needed more than ever in law enforcement agencies and government. And Flock believes that we have the technology to act as a force multiplier to really capture and distribute that objective evidence to the right users, your officers, and engage the community to support and grow. So how does this technology work? This here is a it's a depiction of what our cameras take. It's a still image of the rear of the vehicle. So what we all see here is exactly what that camera captures. It's a really great example of that. And Flock Safety is a subscription model. So when you acquire Flock, it is infrastructure free. So it allows your city to focus on city business, your officers to use this effective tool. And we take care of the camera health, upgrading technology, training your officers, et cetera. So this is license plate recognition. It alerts police of wanted vehicles, and it's used to solve crime and adheres to all state laws. What it is not facial recognition. It's not tied to any personal identifiable information. And the data is not stored beyond 30 days. It is automatically deleted from the system after 30 days. So how does this technology prevent and eliminate crime? Well, it's proactive. So anytime a wanted vehicle passes by a Flock camera, your officers would receive an alert of that vehicle within 20 seconds. It's investigative, again, getting that objective information into the hands of officers to pursue that investigation. And then Flock cameras also act as a deterrent. Once individuals know that Flock cameras are up in your community, it doesn't make it desirable really to commit crimes in your area. So this is really important to us. It's mitigating risk. So how do we protect your community members' privacy? The footage is 100% owned by your city, by your department. It will never be shared or sold by Flock, period. This 30-day short retention period ensures that all of the data that is not associated with a crime is automatically deleted and not recoverable. All of the data is secured in the AWS cloud and is encrypted end-to-end. A search reason is required, which creates an audit trail for those checks and balances. And this is not used for traffic enforcement. This is a transparency and insights portal. This is unique to Flock, and it provides departments a customizable way to share information with their community, including their LPR policies and what agencies that they are sharing their data with. There is an insights dashboard that provides administration in their audit search history and data so that you can evaluate that return on investment. And this is Vallejo PD's transparency portal. And then lastly, we're already solving and preventing crime. This is a list of Flock Safety customers in the state of California, and then more specifically in the Bay Area and NorCal. This is a case study from Morgan Hill Police Department. So in 2.5 months, they had 51 stolen vehicles recovered and 66 arrests made. And then Sergeant Landy, you had touched upon, and I believe Chief did too, had mentioned this case study. Did you all want to go into further detail with these, or I can move through to the next?
I would actually like to hear them. If we're going to be considering this and we have detailed case studies, we should hear them, I think, if I may.
If I may, I'll pick up the case studies. So this is a case from September. It was a reported child abduction reported by 2 juveniles. We had pretty much no leads, but the report sounded, at least the initial report that came in sounded severe. The report was an adult grabbing a 7-year-old or 8 to 9-year-old female off the street, putting them in a car and driving off. We had no witnesses other than 2 8 to 9-year-old boys. No license plate, and at least for quite a while, no surveillance video. We had no leads. Again, we're a small agency. I had to call in additional resources to try to work this case. At a certain point, we had exhausted everything we could do on the street. So I had to go down to El Cerrito to make a formal request for a check of their flock system. From that, I was able to get a match of a vehicle similar to what was described by the original reporting juveniles. We were able to use that then to track down a license plate, then addresses, and then send officers out to multiple different cities to conduct welfare checks. In the end, we were able to resolve the issue, and it was just a misunderstanding, and there was no issue. But had this been an actual abduction, we would have had nowhere to go. We simply did not have any leads, and this was absolutely determinative of the outcome from an investigation's point of view.
Is there a second case study?
There is a second case. These are just representative. We've been able to engage with formal requests to El Cerrito for assistance on numerous cases, but I felt these were the most illustrative of how we're using, making those requests to flock. This is the case that the chief was asked about earlier. Officer Smith was conducting an extra patrol, saw a suspicious vehicle. The vehicle took off at a high rate of speed. He followed, was able to get a vehicle description, and we were then able, he did not feel he had enough to actually pursue the vehicle, but later returned to where he saw the vehicle and determined it was involved in a attempted catalytic converter theft. Again, we'd have had nowhere to go with this other than a vehicle description and no investigative leads, but given the frequency at which we're being impacted by catalytic converter thefts, I made a formal request to El Cerrito for assistance. They were once again gracious enough to check their cameras, and we were able to quickly find a match. We were able to use that to locate the owner of the vehicle and take some remedial action regarding the vehicle taking off, and at least be aware of what vehicle was involved in this attempted crime. This is a more just general, kind of description of where El Cerrito's cameras are located. They have cameras located bordering us on Arlington at Lamb and then also on Mosier. It's provided us very valuable data of the direction of flight for suspect vehicles. From an officer safety point of view, El Cerrito's cameras have given us early warning when suspect vehicles are coming into the community. Again, typically I've got one officer working. They don't have cover. So knowing that a stolen vehicle or a wanted vehicle is coming to the community at least gives our officers some opportunity to start coordinating a response with our neighboring agencies. That's an officer safety issue, not just a public safety issue, and one that's important for understanding how we're able to make a response to a threat presenting to the community.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over back to Kristen. Thank you.
So this is a case study out of San Marino PD. This is their one-year result. So they had 70% decrease in residential burglaries, a 19% decrease in serious violent crimes, and a 36% requested increase of cameras. Long-term crime reduction in Vacaville. So they reported a 33% decrease in reported vehicle thefts, 35% increase in arrests related to vehicle thefts, and they've requested to increase the number of the cameras twice. This is a smash and grab robbery out of San Bruno, California. It made national headlines. So, but what didn't make the news is 5 individuals broke into this jewelry store. They were actually chased off by the owner, and the owner provided a description of the vehicle to officers. Officers created a custom alert and entered that into the flock system. Officers feared that they would come back around to try to finish the job, and they were alerted that the suspect vehicle was in fact back in the location very soon after that first incident. And they were able to stop that car and make an arrest, and very likely preventing an escalation of violence from occurring. And then lastly, I just wanted to share this case study. This was a stranger and stranger abduction that happened in Chamblee, Georgia. This mom and baby were out for a walk and were approached by two armed masked individuals. And after a brief struggle, they took baby from mom and fled. Mom was, of course, distraught, was able to get a vehicle description to officers who an Amber Alert was issued soon after, and an alert was created in the flock system. A search was conducted, and the suspect vehicle was actually located a couple hours later across state lines. Officers were able to very safely make a felony stop and return baby to mom within 5.5 hours of that Amber Alert being issued. We're finding that flock. This is in a very rare case, but it illustrates how the cameras really provide an opportunity to help officers find a needle in a haystack. And in these cases, time is critical. And we're finding that with missing vulnerable persons, silver alerts, amber alerts, flock cameras are really impacting the time that we're locating these missing folks. So I will stop there and pass it back to Chief Genkaz or Sergeant Landy for any additions, or we can begin with questions.
Fabulous presentation. We'll open it up to questions from the board and from the public.
Thank you, Officer Landy, and thank you, Kristen, for the great report. I do have, before I turn it over to the rest of the board, I had just a couple of questions. Where exactly are we proposing the location of these 5 cameras? And actually, yeah, I'll just stop there.
At the moment, we only have a determination of, I think, 3 cameras at ingress and egress points on the main thoroughfares in Kensington. That's where we're going to get the most traffic and the most bang for our buck. We haven't determined the other 2 cameras yet, and I think that Sergeant Landy, if I'm not mistaken, wants to collaborate with El Cerrito, and we want to be a force multiplier so that they can utilize what we have and we can utilize what they have. So I think that is going to be determinant of the final 2 cameras. But that is also in collaboration with the expertise of Flock. They've also looked at and given advice of where these cameras should be to be most effective.
Okay, Director Goff.
Just to clarify that then, so that would be likely on the Arlington and places, and then also down in the Colusa, or?
What do you have for the first 3, Sarge?
So the first 3, and this is, again, worked out initially in collaboration with El Cerrito and with the advice from Flock, is we're looking at the ingress point on Colusa Circle at near the Oakview intersection. We're looking at the northbound entry into Kensington off of Arlington by Amherst, and then also a camera placed up on Grizzly. There are gaps that we are looking at filling and also having discussions and kind of about whether or not we need to use 1 or 2 of the cameras for not just for the ingress, but also for egress. We get a lot of that because Flock is a network system. Some of that work is being done for us by El Cerrito. Their cameras are capturing a fair bit of that information already. So we may not need to deploy the cameras with both ingress and egress. But right now I'm prioritizing cameras that show ingress into the district because that's what gives us the alert that, you know, a wanted vehicle, a stolen vehicle has come in. That then gives officers the time to start responding. It does still give us some actionable leads for investigations. Ideally, you know, we'd have more cameras that capture ingress and egress at, you know, 5 of the points that we're looking at, but that would require an increase in the number of cameras to be deployed.
Director Duggan.
So how much would 5 cameras cost, and would that amount fit within this year's police budget already?
I don't know yet that we're at the stage of cost. I don't think we are. I think we're still working that stuff out with Flock. And it's on a per camera basis. I'll leave it at that, sir.
The plan was for this board meeting for the discussion in regard to the operation, and then we would bring it back with the actual cost and how it fits into the budget.
Yeah, I noted that there was a cost presentation in the documentation that you.
It's in that
3,
ballpark.
5, and 10 cameras. Yeah,
It's in that ballpark.
right. One question has to do with sharing the information. I noticed that Piedmont seems to have an agreement with multiple jurisdictions.
Yes.
Sharing, while the Vallejo approach was to only share when there was a request made.
Yes.
Which would be the preferable approach if you were to if we were to allow these?
We share our information. We would share our information when a request is made, the same way El Cerrito shares it with us when a request is made. You don't just get to go in and look at the data. You have to make a formal request, and it's a process.
Right.
That's the one that we would prefer.
Okay.
But El Cerrito is proactively giving information. That's sharing as well. You're not requesting. Sometimes they tell you, a car is coming in.
That's because it's alerted to them on the radio.
And they're alerting you. So they're sharing it without a request.
Hey, we've got a hot car that's coming up the hill. You need to be aware of this.
Right. So but that is sharing without a request.
Absolutely.
Well, I assume it's a proactive sharing on El Cerrito's part. You haven't made the request. They're alerting you to the fact that the car is coming into our jurisdiction.
They're alerting us that there are criminals driving in.
Yeah, right. So
what we absolutely want them to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'm assuming that would happen regardless of whether you had a flock in place or not. If they knew the car was coming up, let's say Mosier and turning and going into Kensington on the Arlington, they would alert you to that effect.
Correct. They would also alert us if they're in pursuit of a vehicle.
Exactly.
They would say, hey, we're coming your way. We're chasing a stolen car. They just robbed a bank. We're coming up the Arlington.
Right.
They would notify us of that as well.
Right. The camera on the Arlington that El Cerrito has, is that going into El Cerrito, the one on Mosier? I noticed that there is one at that area. At least it indicated that there is one place there.
I believe it shows vehicles entering onto Mosier from Arlington, so it's going to be showing ingress into El Cerrito from Arlington.
And what about Berkeley? I know they have similar cameras, but I don't think it's flock.
I don't believe they're using the flock system. I think they're using, I don't actually know who their vendor is.
But I presume that we would want to have some, well, maybe you already have a relationship with Berkeley with regard to their sharing information on hot cars, like should we say, coming into Kensington?
Right now, most of that information that we're getting is from the allied agencies in Contra Costa County. So that's coming primarily from El Cerrito, Richmond, and the other agencies that interface with us on a more regular basis.
So given the fact that Spruce comes right into Grizzly Peak and into and the Arlington, yes, right, and closer to add another one, I'm certainly I would hope that Berkeley would be sharing information, or we could get information from them if needed.
I would hope so too.
If I could add really quick that Berkeley is a flock customer. And then just to add a bit more information to the director's question about sharing information, I would like to point out that when whatever law enforcement agency your department elects to share information with, that other agency would still have to enter in a search reason into the system. And it's all of that is tracked. So Chief would have access to, if they're sharing information with Berkeley, what Berkeley is accessing, and that is all there for your department to review.
Quickly on.
I was
All right.
Yeah, let me, I just want to, we are getting late on time and I do need to see my kids. So I want to move us along, but this is a really important topic.
I have two questions.
Let me finish. I do, what I'm sensing is that I think what's really critical for us is going to be the actual privacy or the policy that is drafted. So I appreciate the two examples that were submitted. I want to state that I would prefer the Vallejo model where we share only by request. I don't feel comfortable with the Piedmont model. I'd love to see a few other examples of policies if possible, but I think before I'd be comfortable taking any vote, I'd really want to see that actual Kensington policy. So I do have a process question. Who drafts that? Is that our general counsel, or who would draft the policy?
I would draft it.
Okay. Yes, I would love to see a draft of that policy before I'd be ready to vote. But I totally understand the efficiencies and the benefits of a program like this. I just want to make sure that the policy really does protect personal, confidential information, and that we're not just sharing license plates randomly, which I trust we wouldn't. So I guess those are my main concerns: the privacy. And Director Duggan.
I'll keep it brief. So I was wondering whether an agreement with all cities that border us might be a way to go. And, I guess all of this, you can make recommendations and give us information about why and why not. I have a question. What if a crime is reported after 30 days? Sometimes there are crimes where nothing, someone's taken advantage of, or elder abuse, or whatever it might be, where after 30 days, you might want to know who went in and out of someone's house. How come the data cannot be kept somewhere? Or could we make a choice to keep that data more than 30 days?
Kristen?
Yep. Thank you so much for that question. It's a common one. We really settled on 30 days because we felt that it was that sweet spot between protecting the privacy of innocent folks and giving law enforcement enough time to investigate a crime. We realize that there are some circumstances that beyond a 30-day period, that information could be useful, but unfortunately, that is our set standard. If a elected body would like to extend that retention period, that is possible, but it does come at an extra cost to store that data for longer.
Director Goff.
Related question. So I had read somewhere that if the data is collected or connected to a crime, that it could be recoverable after 30 days. But the crime would have had to have been reported in that 30-day period. Is that right?
If we, let's see if I can answer that correctly. If somebody provides us a license plate and it's in our investigation, I think it will live in our investigation. If it's an ongoing investigation, we're not going to take evidence that we've collected and throw it in the trash if it's part of an ongoing investigation. We're going to keep that plate with us. And that photograph that we took of that car, that's going to be part of the investigation. That wouldn't die out.
Yeah. It sounded like
our ability to search the stuff would die out.
Yeah, it sounded like there was a way to dip back into this Flox system to recover.
I think that's what Kristen was mentioning.
Yep. So thank you, Chief. Yes, that is to add to what Chief was sharing. When the image is captured and it's uploaded into the cloud, and it kind of is given a life stamp. So at 30 days, that one image would be automatically deleted from the cloud. However, if the department was able to or needed that image for a criminal investigation, they would access that image from the cloud and transfer that to whatever evidence platform or repository, and then that would then be subject to your department's data retention. So it would be pulled from the cloud and retained for criminal investigation purposes. All the other images kind of captured at the same time, same day, would then be wiped. They are not.
I'm sorry. This is very similar to what we do with body camera footage. We retain body camera footage that's part of an investigation for far longer than its deletion date. And that's for obvious prosecution reasons. The DA's office might need it for a longer period of time, but we have deletion dates for all the video footage from the cameras that the officers wear on their body. But if it's labeled as part of an investigation, it'll stay as an investigation.
Director Hassai.
Two questions. You mentioned that this is a subscription model, and this is for Kristen, I think, and you mentioned that, Flock handles the technology and training. So does that mean the installation of the technology, the maintenance, the updating, as well as training of the officers, just to clarify?
Correct. Yes, we spearhead and take care of all of that and coordinate and organize and assist your department through.
And, I two questions about the case studies. One is, what was the resolution with the car that was, suspected of about to engage in a catalytic converter theft?
So in that case, again, because Flock does not record any organic information, so there's no faces or person information. All we have is the vehicle plate. Vehicle code allows us to write citations to the registered owner of vehicles for any vehicle code violations that they're responsible for. In this case, we couldn't make a case for fleeing a lawful stop, but we were able to still send the owner of the vehicle a citation for the original violation that the officer tried to stop them for. It's not what we would like. It's not solving that a particular case, but the resolution is that we're still able to take some kind of enforcement action. The owner of that car now is on notice that we're aware that the vehicle is being used in our district to commit crimes. And it also provides us with information that we're then able to use to make sure that the officers are aware that if they see that vehicle in the future, to at least be aware that of its recent history of being involved in a crime.
Okay, and then the second one is really for Kristen, which is that correlation is not necessarily related to causation, and so in the San Marino example of the reduction in crime, how do you attribute that to Flock in particular? This was not about, closing out cases or solving crimes. This was about a reduction in crime.
Correct. And I'm sure you're aware that data is so nuanced. What San Marino was able to collect and what they saw at the time of the implementation of the cameras, right, there was that correlation. Again, really difficult to tie it because there's so many different factors. But again, at the implementation of the cameras, they then saw this result.
And I wonder if either Sergeant Landy or Chief Gancas can comment on El Cerrito's examples, because we still hear plenty of stories of, the catalytic converters. If you're on Nextdoor, you hear about stuff. So El Cerrito has these cameras. Berkeley has these cameras. I don't know about crime going down in those jurisdictions. So I would like to know either, is there a reduction in their statistics or is there a increase in, solving, I have used this particular term when you solve a crime.
So I don't think it'd be fair to me to speak to any of our neighboring agencies' crime statistics. We don't have access to their data. What I would just say is that all these programs are very new. El Cerrito, Richmond, and Berkeley have all just implemented their programs. Most of these departments are networking their cameras in order to provide better, rapid response and situational awareness to the allied agencies. But I would say, and I'm sure Kristen can speak to this in general, that having the cameras for a few months is not nearly enough time to make a assessment as to whether or not there is an impact in the overall crime rates. I mean, crime rates fluctuate. They are, as you see in whether it be our response times or our crimes, they fluctuate month to month and for many, many different reasons. But I think the assessment that I've gotten in interacting with a lot of not only our neighboring agencies, but agencies throughout the Bay Area about Flock, or if they're using another system, is that especially when it comes to their situational awareness and their ability to coordinate responses, their ability to support better officer and public safety, and their ability to close cases by having leads, that they all feel very strongly that this has impacted their efficacy as a public safety agency.
Thank you.
Unless we have more questions from the board, I'd love to turn it over to the public.
Let me just make one point following up on Brian's point, is that these cameras are useful with regard to a crime committed with the use of a vehicle. And that's the important thing. There are a lot of other crimes that have nothing to do with vehicles and nothing to do with this technology. So you need to look at it from that perspective.
Any questions from the public? I see 2 hands in Zoom. Any here in the audience? If not, we'll go to Zoom. John Gaccioni, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. A couple of points. I read the information in the agenda package, and in relationship to the system being hooked to Vallejo, this flock system keeps information for 30 days standard, but Vallejo seems to keep it for a year. So there's that. And it seems that this flock system would be linked to Vallejo. So we would be really part of Vallejo's system, good or bad as that may be. That was one point. Second point is, don't the patrol cars have the ability to have license plate readers in the patrol cars? I thought they were equipped with that information. And then the third thing is, it seems like their flock would be asking us to basically beta test their system. So since it's relatively new, those are my comments. But if someone could speak to that, that would be great. Thank you.
I can be brief. Thank you, John. All very, very good comments and questions. The flock system is not that new. It's being used statewide and nationwide. It was one of the largest presenters down at IACP in San Diego. They have hundreds and hundreds of customers, and the system is proven very sound. In terms of Vallejo, that policy that was placed there was just an example Lexipol policy. And Vallejo chose 30 days in their policy. That was their decision, and each city can choose its own policy and how they wish to keep it. And lastly, would we be tied to Vallejo's system? No, we would not be tied to Vallejo's system. We would be an autonomous one. But Kristen, jump in, and if you can clarify any of the things I just said.
I think you did a great job, Chief. And just a reminder that the data is 100% owned by the department, and therefore the department will make the decision as to who they share the data with.
Thank you. I see another hand. Paul Doro, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Alex. I'd just like to comment on this item and on general and the Chief's presentations tonight. This sounds like a really excellent example of proactive policing. I appreciate the Chief bringing it to the board's attention, and I hope you'll consider it, and it sounds like a very good idea to me. Secondly, I think over the past few meetings, including tonight, the Chief's presentations have really shown us that we've got a highly professional police department now. And I think that's a wonderful bit of good news for the whole community. Thank you to the Chief, to the department, and all the officers, and to the board for bringing this about. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions from the public?
Very good.
Director Hosai, I see.
I'd like to ask about information, particularly from Kristen, I guess, about, mistakes that can be made, a false alert where somehow the information is wrong, whether it's that the license plate wasn't really stolen or whatever. And if you have any statistics on that.
So you're asking how often that happens?
I mean, there are mistakes are made. So do you have any information about mistakes made, whether the license plate reader somehow made a mistake or the information tied to the license plate was incorrect, where someone was stopped shouldn't have been?
Thank you. That's a great question. So in the flock system, when officers are alerted to a wanted vehicle, they will also receive a confidence rate with that image. And so that will help them, that will give them additional context when they are pursuing that investigation. The board was talking about policy, and policy is really important. And I will, if Chief or Sergeant Landy want to jump in here and add additional context, just kind of as police practices, when they're alerted to a stolen vehicle, they're going to take certain steps and measures before they initiate.
Sure. If an alert comes out to an officer, whether it be on their MDC, the mobile computer, or their phone that says, hey, there's a stolen car in Arlington, and they get behind that car or not even get behind the car, they're going to read that license plate number to the dispatcher, who's then going to run through a Department of Justice computer whether or not that car really is wanted. Is that license plate attached to a car? Then the dispatcher is going to say, this is the description of that car. If the officer comes behind the car and he's told it's a Mercedes-Benz, the last three license plate numbers of 666, he's going to look at that car and say, this is a white Volkswagen. Something's not right here. So it may not turn into what was broadcast out. There are always going to be human errors when you allow human beings involved in things. And people do switch license plates on cars. Thieves do it pretty regularly. But the officers are always going to double check that information. They're never going to rely on something that comes across the screen and simply act on it in a manner. They're way above that, especially in Kensington. So I think the chances for failure in that realm are very slim, very reduced.
And I guess I was also asking Kristen about, you have a product, it's a technological product, and we know that technology is not foolproof. I mean, we know that, license plate readers aren't facial recognition by any means, but as a representative of this product, what can you tell me about improvements that have to be made, error rates? I'm asking you that question.
Yes, so thank you. We are constantly improving our product, and we do, it's machine learning. And so whenever there is for example, the Rivian model of vehicle, we trained our machine on that vehicle. So we're constantly learning. Those machines were constantly learning and training, and we have a whole team that is constantly improving the product. And like you mentioned, yes, mistakes happen, but with our quality control and our continuous improvement, our monitoring of camera health, providing officers that confidence in that still image, and really good, solid police policy, we really, I think, do a good job at minimizing that risk. But you are correct, it is not 100% immune to mistake.
But you don't have any kind of percentage or internal information that you're willing to share that says, when we started in 2017, we had an error rate of 12%, and now we have an error rate of 2%.
I don't know that we have those exact statistics, but I can certainly reach out, and whatever I find, I will absolutely share with Chief to then share with the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a very cool question following up on that? So is there a feedback loop where Flock is told whether that license plate was accurate or not? Is that,
yes.
Does that feed, and so the police department will feed back to you and say that was erroneous?
Correct.
And one last question. Does Flock maintain a database of stolen vehicles with their license plates?
We do no. So the Flock system is integrated with NCIC, and those vehicle descriptions and plates that is how the department is then alerted to that wanted vehicle, but Flock does not maintain that.
And NCIC is what?
That's the National Criminal Information Center, and that's the federal nationwide database.
Okay, so Flock doesn't retain any of the data on stolen vehicles or of that type. So when you're providing information to the police department, then they would be following up on whether that vehicle would be stolen or would have participated in a crime or so forth.
Precisely.
Thank you.
All great questions. Any other questions from the board or the public? So my understanding for the next steps, hopefully in December, we might see a policy or a draft policies.
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, do you want to present the costing information?
Yes,
Okay.
December. We'll do that. I'll get you a policy here in the next week or so.
Great.
Be very, very, very similar to Vallejo's.
Well, that policy should be shared with all board members if it's drafted.
It will be. I'll give it to the general manager.
Thank you. Okay. On that note, I think we're done. And the next meeting is scheduled for December 14th. See you all then. We're adjourned. It is now 8:42.
Thanks, Skip.